funnily enough, my mum had been saying, maybe you should go and see a psychiatrist, maybe you need to get some medication, you're doing all of these things, you're seeing the psychologist, maybe there's another step, that you need to take. And I think because of my unwillingness to accept that I had depression,
sure,
I didn't want to, like you were saying before, I didn't want to just think, a tablet's going to make me, feel better. And what does taking medication mean? What impact is that going to have on me? Am I going to be on medication for the rest of my life? Will I ever be able to work again? And then you do a Dr. Google and depression medication and you see all these side effects, and I thought, I don't want any of those. I've got enough, to deal with.
It's a very contentious issue about, medication and how much it actually helps or how much it doesn't help, right? For some people, it seems to really make a huge difference in their recovery.
Yep.
And for others, it, kind of seems to send them kind of down. And it sounds like even before this, you were quite you did a lot of the natural kind of therapy kind of thing, right?
Yes.
Medication is, in that sense, a little bit of a no-no.
Yes.
Drink some chamomile tea, you'll be great, Take a bit of elderberry tree before you sleep, you'll be fine. So you had this real resistance towards medication.
So I had to get to a point where it was no longer a choice.
Right.
I didn't have a choice. Did I want to live or did I want to die? That's what the choice felt like. So,
it's a shitty one.
Yeah. So I thought, well, I do want to live and I really just want this thing to hurry up and go away. So if I have to take medication, then I will. And then that was then probably another part of the journey. I went and saw a psychiatrist.
Yep.
And they're very different to psychologists. My psychologist, I'd pour my heart out and we'd hug at the end. The psychiatrist, the psychiatrist felt like, what are your symptoms? How long have you had them?
Yeah.
What's going on? What do you need? 15 minutes, $200, see you later. Try these.
It's $400 now.
Well, actually, it's probably about $250.
Yeah.
Anyway, but they did help me. I needed to, do something else. But then I remember, I hadn't got the script. They had to get phone authorization eventually, for this level of medication that I was taking. So I had to try 4 different types of medication over a period of time before something lasted for a long period. So I felt like a bit of a guinea pig at the start. And I remember even going to put the first script in at the chemist. And I thought, maybe I should go to a chemist that's not my local chemist because then they'll know that I'm taking depression medication. What if they ask me about it and there's people in the queue or they have to tell me something, you got to take it like this? I was so still ashamed that I had depression and that how had I somehow failed and ended up in this position in life.
Was there a lot of self-blame?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, what could I have done to avoid this? What did I do wrong? What did I not do? Why is this happening to me? How did I end up here? I think that I've often heard depression say that people talk about depression now, it's like anger turned inward. If, I wasn't happy with my life, I was striving in all of these areas to change it and, nothing was working. So where else do I direct all of that, frustration, anger, but,
inward.
So that depression definitely helped me get to a baseline where I actually had some energy, and with energy came clarity, and with clarity came an ability to think, and with an ability to think came a willingness to then actually, take action and do things. So I was still seeing my psychologist, I was still regulating my exercise and my sleep and, what I was eating and where I was spending my time. And then eventually adding that other layer of, medication, I started to then, get better.
Okay. So was the medication, sorry to interrupt you, but was the medication a bit of a circuit breaker then for you?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah, definitely.
Because, a lot of conversations with you and a lot of people, medication has been explained as a bit of a crutch, right? Like if you break your leg, sure, you can kind of lay in bed and wait for it to heal, but you want to get up, you want to move around. The crutch allows you to do the things that you couldn't do if you didn't have the crutch.
Yes.
But the whole idea was that eventually after your leg heals, the crutch is disposed of.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I got to a point where I thought I will happily take medication for the rest of my life.
Okay.
If that helps me deal with this situation, I went through, I think, 4 different, changes of medication. My psychiatrist called it at one point in time I had a breakthrough, which to me was a breakdown. He was saying that's when the depression breaks through the medication, so your medication isn't working anymore.
Right.
So I had to go back to him and go, oh, here I am at ground zero again.
It's not working.
Yeah. And let's try, something else.
And most people don't know that, like, especially those who have never taken medication for like anxiety, depression, is that it doesn't always work the first time.
Yes.
And you mentioned before, you said you went through 4 different types of medication before you found something that works for you.
Yep.
It's a trial and error process for a lot of people.
Yeah, yep. And the first medication I took helped, and that worked for a certain period of time, and then it stopped working. Then I had to try, something else. And I think probably as I progressed through my, depression, the different, medications also sort of needed to change, to reflect that. And I just got to a point where I thought, my medication is just a vitamin. It's like taking my omega-3 or some vitamin C or whatever it is. I eventually got over the stigma that I was popping 8 pills every morning and had to get phone authorization from my psychiatrist. I'd sit in his office, we'd have our 15-minute conversation, and then at the end of the conversation he'd have to get phone authorization for the level of medication I needed to take. And he would say, Amanda Stevenson, major depressive disorder, and the type of medication that I needed. And it triggered me every time. I'd be like, don't talk about me like that. I still struggled with that label, yet I knew that I needed that medication to help me get better. So it was just a process of time, like the process I went through in managing my depression, then, managing to be okay with the fact that I had to take medication and going, it's just a vitamin that helps me to function.
Yeah.
And, that's just how it is.
You just have to reframe it.
Yes.
To yourself a little bit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I mean, you're now getting treated, with medication. You're putting a lot of good steps into play. Are you seeing an improvement?
Yes.
Okay.
Like it felt, everything about my depression journey felt slow and painstakingly slow. But yes, I did start to see an improvement, and really it started with my, energy levels. And I still now to this day will monitor my energy as the most important indicator of how I'm travelling, with my well-being and mindset and managing my emotions. I still watch and monitor my energy levels.
Is there a difference between the energy levels that you're talking about there and say like tiredness or, not getting enough sleep? Is there a different quality to it?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's when I realised that my energy is lower than normal, it normally is in parallel with my thoughts being not as positive as normal. And, my mood isn't, as upbeat or as positive as normal. Yeah, so regular tiredness, you just, kind of manage. But low energy, it has those couple of other indicators that, come with it that I think, okay, so now I've got low energy, I'm going to be getting frustrated, then that leads to kind of stress and then I'm annoyed, and then it's a slippery slope to, feeling worse and anger and then, depression.
Okay, wow. Very hard-won insights, it sounds like. So you're getting all this assistance again, are you? Pharmacologically, you're getting it, through psych counselling. I can imagine that there are a lot of support people around you at this stage. Did you have a lot of that around you?
Yeah, my family and friends were absolutely amazing. The difficulty was for me, probably equally as difficult for them dealing with me, was that they didn't really know how to help.
Yeah.
They wanted to help. People sent me cards, people invited me to barbecues, people wanted to drop in and see me. My parents were there all day, every day, trying to support me, but they didn't really know what to do. They didn't really know what to say. They didn't really know how to support me, and probably in the way that I needed it. And that was really difficult. It was difficult for me. I was trying to deal with what I was going through, let alone trying to then I felt like I had to educate people. Don't say this to me, don't do this, don't ask that. If I say I don't want to see you, I don't want to see you. I almost like had to lay down all of these rules.
Yeah.
This is what I need from you. And, you know, even the example that I used before of having this conversation with my mum, you know, there were times where we would have very similar conversations and I would be getting upset and raise my voice and, you know, mum would say, well, don't yell at me. And I would say, someone needs to keep their shit together here. And it's not me, it's you. Because this is the best I can do. You know?
Just again, that was the scary face had come up again. But that's okay, I'm used to the scary face now.
And then I'd walk away feeling guilty that I just, you know, had this horrible conversation with my mum who all she's trying to do is support me.
Sure.
So, but I didn't have the capacity to apologise, which then made me feel, you know, even worse. And that's where I turned to poetry. I would write all, you know, my thoughts and they came out in poems and I'd be able to go, here, mum, here's a poem that I wrote.
Wow.
And hopefully she'd get the message that there's an apology in there somewhere because I couldn't bring myself to say, I'm sorry that, you know, for that interaction that we just had. I didn't have the capacity.
And I'm hearing a lot of strain on a lot of relationships around you. Did you lose friends? Did you lose people around you? Because I can imagine.
I had people who, it was both. I had people who didn't know what to do and didn't know how to help, so they just sort of stayed away. And then I had friends who had no idea of what I was going through. And eventually, you know, when the newspaper article came out about my experience of depression and people saw that, then I had people contacting me going, oh, I didn't know you were going through that. Why didn't you tell me? You know, they thought, I had a friend who had a baby, you know, got married, invited me to all these events. I don't even think I replied to saying, no, I'm not coming. She thought I just wasn't interested. And she didn't, and I didn't really want to tell her, well, I'm not coming. You're going through this amazing, significant, beautiful event in your life. I don't really want to tell you that I'm depressed and I hate myself and I hate my life. So I'll just not say anything. And so she thought that I didn't care about her anymore, but it's just that I didn't have the capacity to care.
Yep.
So then I had people like that who, you know, would kind of came back later saying, why didn't you tell me, you know, I didn't know how you're going, like, are you okay?
So you've, you know, in this space, right? What gave you the idea to actually start the GenWHY groups?
So when I was going through my experience, yes, my family and friends were amazing, and yes, I had a psychologist and a psychiatrist, and I'm grateful that I could actually afford to, you know, have those service providers. But I got to a point where I just thought, I just want to speak to someone who I'm not paying, and someone who can actually understand what I'm going through. I want to find someone else, 27, going through depression, who I can just, you know, have a conversation with. And I went looking for support. My mum was, we spent a day, we're looking online, we're making phone calls, we're calling organisations, and I couldn't find a specific support service for adults over the age of 25. So there was a couple of support groups that were recommended to me. I went to one of them. It was an evening. I made my mum come with me. I rocked up at this hall. It was on like a Tuesday night. And, you know, I walked in and no one really greeted me and I wasn't really sure what to do. And it was like another layer of, okay, so I've got depression and I have to accept that. I have to take medication, now I have to accept that. And now I have to publicly face people with the fact that now people can see that there's another admission.
It's almost like a coming out.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I walk into this hall, there's all these different, you know, people, all these different ages, and we sit down and we start going through, you know, this kind of conversation. And I didn't relate to any of the people there. They were, you know, amazing and really, you know, supportive, and they had this great process, but there was older people, there was younger people, there was bipolar, there was schizophrenia, you know, postnatal depression. There was just, I just wanted someone with depression in my age group. So as helpful as that was, I left that meeting just feeling more isolated, more alone, less understood, and, you know, struggling again on my own. So I thought, well, there was another group that I could try, so, you know, let's try that one. I did start to think, I'm not sure if this group is right for me, when, you know, the person organising it contacted me and said it was lunchtime, I think on a Thursday. It would only cost, you know, $2 for the lunch. It was right next to the Big Issue office. If I wanted to sell the Big Issue, you know, I could get involved in that. And I thought, wow, that's a really cheap lunch. And because is normally what people do, you know, who are homeless, and I'm not homeless, but, you know, I've got a mental illness and I need some support. And I thought, this is what you found, you know, just this is what the universe has delivered, just go and see what it's like. And as soon as I walked around the back of this church in Northbridge, I thought, I do not, you know, belong here. It was really for homeless people who had really, you know, severe mental illnesses. And again, like, it was just another humbling experience, but it was another isolating and completely frustrating experience. And so I thought, where is everybody? Where is the 1 in 5 people who are going through this? Why can't I find anyone? Why is there such a stigma? Why isn't anybody talking about it? And I got so frustrated that when I saw an article in the newspaper, the editor wrote a column saying, you know, depression should not go unheard. All these people are experiencing mental illness in our community. You know, we need to support them. We should be able to talk about it. And I thought, well, that's great if there's the support, you know, available. And so I wrote a letter to the editor, and I actually had managed to get back to work at this point in time. So I was employed. I'd been in this organisation for about 12 months, and then this letter came out, and I wrote a letter to the editor of the organisation I was working at, and thought, this is what I've been through. I couldn't find support. I couldn't find anyone. No one is, you know, talking about it, and something needs to be done. And so I thought, well, he's either going to fire me or think I have something actually, you know, important to say. And I rocked up at work on Monday, and I went up to his office and said, hi, Amanda, I, you know, sent that letter back to you, the editor. And he said, all right, well, you know, let's have a chat. And after hearing my story, he said, you know, I think if you would like to be interviewed and share your story, I think it will help people. And you can actually write a column as well, you know, about your experience.
Oh, okay. So you got involved in a column as well?
Yes.
Wow.
And there was a lot of meetings, you know, prior to that. A couple of the journalists, you know, came and spoke to me, and the ones who were going to interview me, and said, you really need to think about this. You know, do you really want to do this? Do you really want to have your photograph taken? You know, it's obviously going to be a very public forum. And I thought, yeah, like, I want to, you know, do that. We need to start putting a face to mental illness. I mean, at that time, I still hadn't told anyone in my workplace that I had, you know, a mental illness. I was saying, you know, I had a physio appointment, you know, once a month, which was my psychologist. And, you know, I still wasn't 100% comfortable with telling people, because I didn't know, like, what are people going to think? What do they know about having a mental illness? You know, would that change the way they look at me? Would that change the way they look at me when I have a sick day, or I'm, you know, grumpy at work, or, you know, I'm not at 100% capacity? That was all still unknown and, you know, kind of concerning, not knowing what people understand of a mental illness and how they may then, you know, look at me. But I thought, someone's got to do it. Like, just, you know, put yourself aside and stand up and write the article, let them interview you and have your photograph taken. And then that was when my life changed. So the article went out with my photo, and the column was written, and they put my email address on the bottom of the column, and I was inundated with people replying, I have gone through the exact same experience. I couldn't find any support. I had parents emailing me saying, my daughter has gone through the same thing. My 30-year-old son is experiencing this. You know, one lady wrote to me saying, how ironic is it that my nephew's death notice is in the paper as the same day as your column.
Wow, that is powerful.
It completely overwhelmed me, and luckily enough, one of the people who also responded to me was Antonella Segri, the CEO of Connect Groups, who are the peak body for support groups. And she saw my column, and she said, if you would like to start a support group, we will help you. And I just said, yep, sure. I thought, there's a need in the community. I've been inundated with all of these people responding, saying they need help. Somebody needs to do something. It may as well be me.
It's a big responsibility to take on your shoulders. Wow.
Yes, which I had no idea. It's one of those things where you look back and think, if I'd known all of the things that I would have had to do, you know, would you have still gone down that path and taken that action?
In hindsight, would you?
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Still have done it.
Yes.
Sure.
Yep. And so that was then the beginning of the GenWHY support group. And I think as well, what I've realised through therapy is I always wanted to do something good. Like I said before, I always wanted to make a difference, and I always wanted to leave a legacy. I never in my wildest dreams thought it would be in the area of mental health.
Yep.
And I've tried to sort of unravel that, like what is that, driving force that I must do something good. And it actually came from, one, my premature birth, and two, not feeling good enough. And the only thing that would make me feel good enough and worthy enough of being here is if I was doing something really amazing and really having an impact and leaving a legacy. Like working a job just, wasn't good enough. And I've done obviously a lot of therapy, and I've had a mentor, and, one of the conversations we had even just in the last 18 months was, I was born prematurely, 13 weeks premature.
13 weeks?
Yeah. I was like this big.
Jeez.
Yeah, my dad could hold us in the palm of his hands, and he said we looked like skinned rabbits and we're pretty ugly.
So when you say we, twin?
Sister, yeah, twin sister. Yeah.
I never knew that about you.
Yes, non-identical, completely opposite.
I was going to say, like, how do I know this is the Amanda that I'm speaking to?
Yes, yeah. And so Mum was in labour for 24 hours. They went to, my dad wasn't allowed in the, surgery, and they said to my dad, she's in a really critical condition. If we have to make a choice between your wife and your unborn children, which one is it?
Oh my God, what a choice.
Yeah, Dad chose my mum, which we still hassle him about. But he had my brother. We've got an older brother who's 2 years older, so he really didn't want to be a single dad with 3 kids.
Yeah,
which is fair enough.
He's going to be paying that off for the rest of his life. There's no coming back from that.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah. But
I'm sorry, Dad.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah,
Amanda's dad.
Love you, Dad. Yeah. So the story that I was always told, though, of my birth was that, yes, obviously Candy and my sister were lucky to survive. And then we were in intensive care for 3 months. And one particular day, back in the day before mobile phones, the hospital had been trying to contact my mum to say, don't come in and visit that day, because I basically had almost died. I'd gone, blue. I'd stopped breathing, and the doctors and the nurses were working on me to bring me, back to life. And my mum happened to come in at the time that was happening, and obviously I survived that experience. So when I was always told that story, I was told, I must be here for a reason.
Right.
I was given a second chance at life. How lucky, to survive. There must be some reason that happened. And I think I've been searching for that reason ever since, but I've been searching for the validation of feeling good enough, of being given that second chance at life. And so if I've been gifted this life, then I need to do something to validate being worthy of that.
Right. That's a big responsibility, that, as I said before, again, wow. I mean, and let's, if we can kind of just move back quickly to the GenWHY groups. Like, how did you come up with like a format idea? Like what was on your mind when you looked at that?
Well, thankfully, Connect Groups really, guided us through that process. We just decided to, all of the people who responded to my article, they said, if you want to start a support group, we'll come. So I replied to all of them and said, yep, I'm going to start a group, let's have a meeting. And Connect Group facilitated, basically a discussion. We had another well-known support group facilitator attend and basically workshop with us, what kind of support do we think we need? How often would we like to meet? How long would we like the meetings to be? And they basically talked us through a structure of a meeting format, a frequency. What do we, really want to get out of the meetings that we have together? And I still remember walking into that first meeting and looking around at all the other, young men and women there and thinking, wow, is that what I look like? Because they look normal. And for so long, all I could see was depression. all I could see was a depressed person. I couldn't see, you know, myself in that. And then suddenly here I was sitting in a room full of people. I could see myself, you know, in them. I was like, wow, there is another person who is going through the same thing as me, and they look like an ordinary person.
I suspect this is a powerful experience because I can see you tearing up again speaking about it.
I know.
Yeah.
It was...
Psychology powers.
Yeah. It was just... I almost felt guilty for being so happy that I'd finally found other people who were depressed, you know, because I for so long just wanted to find someone who was going through, you know, the same thing. And finally I found other people, and they didn't look, you know, different, and they weren't really struggling, or they didn't have any other major, you know, affliction or anything like that. It was just someone exactly like me, and they were just an ordinary person who had gone through exactly the same thing as me, a very difficult experience, and had dealt with it in the best way that they could.
The human face to mental illness, right?
Oh, yeah.
Right? It's not the case where some people have issues. We all have. It's a spectrum in my mind.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a constant balancing act, and it happens to everyone.
Yes.
Not just, you know, someone who doesn't look after themselves, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I never thought depression would happen to, well, someone like me, and I never imagined that I would get to, you know, a point where I hated myself and I hated my life, and I thought the only option is, you know, to kill myself. And learning that to manage your thoughts and manage your mind from even, you know, feeling stressed after you've had a hard day at work, how do you let that go, you know, before you come home and walk in the door and greet your husband or your kids or what have you, to then learning, well, how do I, you know, manage anxiety or major depression? I think exactly that. It is a spectrum, and we all go through it, and we all just deal with it in different ways. And we all need different, you know, levels of support. And I think there's no shame in, you know, needing support. There's, you know, athletes have coaches and psychologists and sports psychiatrists and, you know, all these people who support them to perform at the best of their ability. And that's what we just need, you know, as individuals as well.
And they're not stigmatized.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, coaching is a huge profession at the moment. You know, so many famous and successful people and who really achieve things in life, they have mentors, they have coaches, they have, you know, people who are their, you know, sounding boards. And whether that, it has to be a psychiatrist or a psychologist or just a peer support worker or just a really good friend, I think we all need, you know, various levels of support that help us to be the best kind of human that we want to be.
We can be. Yeah. And, you know, after that that round robin session, that brainstorm session, did GenWHY start taking off from that point?
No.
No. Wow. Okay.
We had a lot of people attended,
Yeah.
and we started with this peer support model, and I was sort of facilitating, and I was managing all the inquiries and the people and texting and getting people together. And sometimes I'd arrive, you know, at a meeting on a Tuesday night, and there'd be 4 people there. And then the next fortnight, you know, there'd be 2, and then, you know, sometimes no one would reply and tell me that they're coming, and I'd rock up and there'd be no one, and, you know, my mum would have to help, you know, get the key sometimes, and she'd be bringing snacks, and, you know, it was very grassroots, hands-on, and it was a really slow kind of burn, really slow to get, you know, awareness. There was still a lot of stigma for, you know, people, you know, wanting to attend. And, you know, after sort of 6 months, and then it became, you know, 12 months of just smaller group sessions, yes, we were making progress, and yes, we were helping people, but I knew there was a massive need. And I thought, we're not, you know, reaching people. And I was getting so frustrated thinking there's only 4 people coming, there's only 5 people coming. You know, I remember ringing my mum one night and saying, if there's no one there tonight, then we're shutting this thing down. And one person, a new person arrived. And it was just her and I, and we had this amazing, you know, conversation. And I thought, well, I helped one person, and that's enough. So we got to a point where we realised that the peer support model wasn't really enabling, you know, the people to achieve what they needed to. And we didn't really have the capacity and skills to deal with people in crisis. So we looked at other models. We thought, let's get a psychologist and, you know, a professional in to really help give these people the tools and resources and information that they needed. So we were lucky enough to apply for and get funding through Connect Groups, because we weren't a registered charity at that point in time. That we got funding through an organisation, WA Charity Direct, who are amazing.
Wow.
Yeah, and they, you know, saw the need in the community and they really supported us to build a website and funding for psychologists for 12 months. And then that completely changed, you know, the model. So thank God we had some awesome psychologists facilitating our group, took the pressure off us, and then we could build that peer support network as well. So then we could add, you know, we called it like a buddy system, where people could, you know, swap numbers and text and communicate in between meetings, which a lot of other groups didn't really allow people to do. You know, we thought, let's add wellbeing workshops, so we have a really holistic approach to helping people manage their health and wellbeing. We used to have a little library. I'd cut these books, you know, every time people could, you know, take, you know, things and learn. And then we, you know, started getting into events and things like that. But the model like that didn't exist. And we knew that if people got the right support in the right environment, that dramatic, you know, changes could happen. And so once we then had 12 months of providing the service in that way, we went back to WA Charity Direct and we reported back to them and said, these are the amount of people that we've helped, this is the impact that it's had, you know, here's some feedback from people. And they don't normally give organisations another, you know, round of funding, but because of the impact that we had, they said, yep, we can help you become a fully registered charity. And then from there, we could really have our own, you know, platform and apply for our own funding and grow the organisation from there, which is, you know, what we've done over the last 10 years.
Wow. Like, I know it's come a long way from when it was GenWHY, and now all the way to kind of Bluebird. And I suppose that name change was to like accommodate a wider, like a wider cohort of people, right? Like,
yes. And GenWHY was really, like, it was Generation Y. Why is there such a stigma? Why isn't anybody talking about it? Why can't I find, you know, the help that I need? Why is it so hard, you know, to find support? And I think it was almost a bit of an angry kind of, what is going on? And we thought, let's now look at how can we help people? How can we make change? How can we be the voice? You know, how can we show people that yes, support is available and you can recover from a mental illness, given the right support, given the right environment, given the right tools, treatment, and, you know, doing the work. Like, you still have to do the work, but if you've got the support and you've got other people around you, you can recover and, you know, manage a mental illness.
wow. What a bunch of accomplishments you've had, Amanda. Bloody hell. Yeah. And, you know, to add to that, you're now writing a book.
Yes. Yeah, writing, I think, as I said before, poetry really helped me unravel my thoughts and feelings. And I remember at one point in time really struggling with my depression. I thought, I want to get away from everyone. Like, I just can't deal with this anymore. And I went down south. I said to my mum, I want to go down south for a weekend. And she was like, oh, I don't think that's a good idea. You're going to be alone. And she called my psychologist, which there was a bit of a boundary thing going on there,
right.
and said, can you just tell me that Amanda's going to be okay? And my psychologist had to say, do you think you're at risk of, you know, killing yourself? And I said, no, I do want to come back. I just need to get away. And while I was away and had this time and space, I started writing what then became, you know, the beginning of my book, which is called Excuse Me, This Is Not What I Ordered. You know, when life serves you up something, you know, you didn't ask for. And it just became a way of understanding, you know, what I was going through and kind of capturing it and reflecting on my experience. But I guess also, again, coming from that drive of something good has to come out of this traumatic, difficult, you know, experience. I was determined that something good would come out of it. I'm not going through this for nothing.
Yeah.
You know, I really want there to be a bigger benefit from, you know, what I'm actually going through. And then the book has now evolved, I guess, over the time as I share my journey of, you know, what I went through in recovery, you know, what I've learned, how I found meaning in that struggle that I went through, and then everything that, you know, I've learned since in managing my mental health and well-being, and what do I do now to, you know, stay healthy. And, you know, I included some of the really raw, you know, stories in that book. There's real, you know, journal entries, there's my poetry, and then there's some just reflection exercises and the exercise that I used to help me at all of the different, you know, stages of what I was going through. So I really just want people to know that there is help, available, and they can get better. And, this is just an experience that happened to me that I never thought, would happen. And I can now say, I haven't seen a psychologist or taken, medication for the last 8 years. And I'm managing, my mental health. So I kind of just want to give people that, hope and, understanding that it will be okay, that, they can get through this, and, really just share, my story in the hope that it, resonates with people and helps them with whatever stage they're at.
Oh, lovely. Is there an ETA when the book might be coming out? Or am I opening a whole can of worms here with that?
Well, it's in the final stages of editing.
Wowza.
Yeah, and I mean, that has almost been, like a journey in itself. I thought it would be kind of cathartic, but it also was almost, an unraveling. There were things that I thought I'd dealt with that then, came up in, the writing of the book. There'd be days where I'd be sitting just crying at the keyboard because I'd read some of my journal entries and I could still feel the pain and anger and anguish that I was going through. And I can't now, it's hard for me to still resonate with that person. I can't ever imagine my mind being in that place again. Well, and I'll never let it get in that place again, but I can still feel how painful that was, for me. And then there were times I cried at the keyboard because I had a blank page in front of me and had nothing to say, So hopefully in a publisher's hands by the end, well, not hopefully, it's going to be with a publisher by the end of the year.
Oh, I like the determination. It's going to be, it's happening, so it's going to be there.
Yes.
I've been following you a bit. I'm like, that just sounds so fucking creepy. I don't mean that.
We wouldn't want people following us in real life, but we like it on social media.
Well, we've known one another for a while now. I've been following you on social media, and I've seen a bit of that journey, and you're very kind of open to expressing how this is difficult. Some days it's just like nothing's coming, and you feel like you want to give up. And then there's some days things kind of go really well. And I want to wish you all the best with this new book that's coming out, and I'm looking forward to reading it. I have to have an autograph from you when it comes out.
Yes.
Has a publisher's been sorted out? Everything like
not yet. I know who I want to preferably publish with.
Yep.
So I just have to go through that process.
Yeah. Maybe if anyone out here who's kind of listening to this podcast, they might be a publisher.
Yes.
Amanda.
That would be great.
Yeah. Look, thank you so much for having a chat with me today. You made my job today so much easier. I have a tendency to waffle on, and I've really had to kind of dial it down today and just basically shut my mouth and let you do the speaking. And you've told this amazing story from all the time since when you started kind of in life all the way up to achieving so many things. And I really kind of I really admire you. Thank you so much for the impact that you've made in the community. And I think for you, it's a watch this space. Many good things to come. Yeah,
absolutely. And thank you so much for the chat. I really enjoyed it. And, hopefully, people can get something out of it and get some takeaways. And I think really that I just want people to know they're not alone and that help is available. And if I can do it, I'm not, special or extraordinary in, any way. That, anyone can manage and, recover from a mental illness. And I think there's so many more people in our community in need. And I really just want to reach those, people in the various different forums. And let's just make a difference and all stay happy and healthy.
And speaking of takeaways, I think it's time for dinner. Thanks, Amanda.